Peace and blessings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Spotlight. I'm Edgewenka, and we have another informative program for you tonight. With me is the Director of Medical Services at PVI HSA, Dr. June Samuel, and we're going to be talking about mental health in the PVI. It's going to be interesting. Let me just go right to it. Doctor, it's always good to see you, Dr. Samuel.
Hey, Edgewenka, how are you?
I good.
It's good to be here.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. I was in the news a couple of days ago.
Uh-huh.
A young man accosted a tourist and was arrested and I think denied bail because of his mental condition. I mean, I didn't necessarily want to start the show off with that, but that was the first thing.
Jump right into it. Jump right into it. Yes, you know, yes.
I mean, every day we have a fair amount of people walk in the streets that are not well. Matter of fact, I speak to most of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somehow I have a connection with them. I don't know. I might be crazy myself. I don't know if that's a right thing to say. That's politically correct.
But, well, yeah, but I mean, you know.
But I have compassion towards them because I always say to myself, there for the grace of God, go away. Because I know the trauma of life.
Right.
You know, and so I try to help when I can.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was only a matter of time before these things happen. You know, why aren't we, mitigating those circumstances proactively?
Well, you know, the discussion about mental health, whenever we have the discussion, it always focuses on the perception exactly as you described it in the opening statement. It's always about persons who seem not to be well, because that's how we assess mental health from a layman's perspective. We look at persons, if they're behaving in any way differently to what we consider to be normal, whatever that is, or if they're behaving differently to us, immediately we want to think that, maybe the person is, quote unquote, as you say, crazy. But, mental health is so much more than that. And it's really about health. It is about, it's not just about being mentally ill, which unfortunately is what we tend to focus on. All of us, as normal as we may like to think that we are, all of us are on the spectrum somewhere. And it's just a matter of, some of us may be brave enough to go and get an assessment and try to understand where we are. Others of us live in denial because we would all like to think that somehow or the other, we're perfect and we have it all together. And therefore, what happens is that in our behaviors, we then only present for help or seek services if we are brought in by some reason.
Well, usually someone seeks help for us.
Someone seeks help on our behalf.
Because they think something is wrong with us.
Because they think something is wrong. Mm-hmm. We have the incident where this person slapped the tourist. And, unfortunately, the headline is about a mentally ill person slapping a tourist. No, one doesn't have anything to do with the other. Okay, so because we can all engage in behaviors, right, that are aggressive towards other people, it doesn't mean that every time we do that, that we're mentally ill. Or that we're acutely mentally ill.
Well, a normal person wouldn't just go up arbitrarily and slap a stranger.
But the question is, what are we talking about when we say normal? Because in our normality, in inverted commas, we have various emotional types of, we're in various emotional states at one point or the other. We know of persons who engage in violent behavior. not everybody who, and the research shows this, that the percentage of persons who engage in any type aggressive or violent behavior who also have a coexisting mental disorder that is diagnosed is less than 3%. So it's a very, very small number. So, we have to be careful about how we link and make those kinds of connections, because, we can be aggressive towards other people, and, we can be triggered by whatever is happening, different things to different persons. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a diagnosable mental disorder at that point in time.
So it could be the whole population walking around here that's mentally ill but appear to be normal, and you never can tell when they'll just snap and go off and do something.
Precisely.
That's,
I mean, we
but
hear
that
of
we consider abnormal.
cases, in other places where persons walk into workplaces, we walk into schools, and we kill children randomly. We walk into the cinema. We hear about those acts of violence. Some of them do have mental disorders, yes, but the majority don't. So
You mean diagnosable?
Diagnosable, yes.
Okay, but it doesn't mean that. I mean, does that mean that? I mean, it's not a crazy thing to do, to walk into a theater, and how could you be normal? How could
It's
you
not.
consider-
It's,
how could
it is
you,
not.
How could
It
you
is
be considered
not
normal?
right. So it is not acceptable behavior to walk into or to be aggressive. I mean, it's not a part of or how we are socialized. But we have aggressive acts that happen all the time in our societies across the world. But if you think about it in that think about the bigger picture, it's not, one doesn't always have something to do with the other. And the truth is that, unfortunately, mental health and mental illness has been plagued by that belief that, persons who are mentally ill equal to they're going to be violent, and that's not true.
That's not true.
Right? So mental, when we talk about mental health, we're talking about being well. We're talking about
Well, then what does being well mean then? If that aggressive behavior is not necessarily ill, it could happen to anyone at any time and be triggered by any event. Then what is well? What is mental
so
wellness?
when we talk about being mentally well, we're talking about a state of health that allows persons to be able to cope with day-to-day stressors, that allows individuals from, and in the broad perspective. So, we all have various responsibilities in life. So it's about being able to function and cope within all of the various responsibilities we have. That if or interactions or interpersonal relationships. So all of those across the whole spectrum. So it's a component of health, right? It's not just the absence or the presence of a condition. So we often think of mentally ill persons or being in mental ill health, right? But that's not the only thing about mental health. So it's not just
So we
about,
view it in extremes.
we view it in extremes.
So, for example,
And
with our bodies, we don't say that we are sick, even though we may be overweight.
that's right.
We may be
That's right.
experiencing some pain. That's not like acceptable. And the same thing we do with mental health. We say, well, we're not mentally ill because we're not aggressive.
We're not aggressive. We're not behaving strangely. We're going to work. Mind you, we're not functioning at work. We're not able to focus and concentrate. We have poor interpersonal relationships at work, but we don't consider ourselves to be, mentally unwell. But as I said earlier, it's a spectrum. There's a whole, there's a spectrum of health, and too often we function in extremes. So we're overweight. We don't do anything about it. We don't recognize that that is physically you're not well if you're overweight. But we wait until we get the chest pain then to go to the doctor.
And that's a sign of mental illness.
Well, no, it's us functioning in extremes because we don't recognize the spectrum. So we do the same thing with mental health, right? We're not happy, we're crying in secret maybe, or we're using alcohol in secret. We're using alcohol to help us to sleep. But the next day we get up and we go to work and we interact and smile with everybody, but we go home at night and we're sad and we're drinking alcohol by ourselves, but we don't consider that to be mentally unwell. But that is a form of not being mentally well.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying?
Yes,
It's a whole spectrum. And because persons, walk around and look, we cannot judge it by how we look. Right, and that's where we make the mistake.
But we always don't have access to that secret behavior, as particularly from your perspective as a clinician. We don't, in the general public, I guess, you don't have access to the behavior behind the scenes, or the secret behavior, or the personal behavior, or the private behavior.
Right.
Where we could really assess the persons, the individuals. Where on the spectrum are they? So we just go along thinking.
So we just go along thinking that all is
fine.
well, right? And one of the things about, as I said, as individuals, we want to feel that we are okay. It is very threatening to the human psyche to think that somehow or the other we're not in control, and that's what not being mentally well represents for a lot of us that feel you feel you have lost a sense of control. You're not able to control your thoughts. You're not able to control how you're feeling. And for us as human beings, we don't like to think that we don't have that sense of control. Being physically ill is more acceptable because we still feel that we have some sense of control, okay? But to think that, or we're not functioning, or minds are not functioning, that's a very, for some people, a very threatening place to be. And so I think that contributes a lot to persons not being willing to admit that, okay, something is not right. So that's why it's important, doing shows such as these, and, you've done the show with Dr. Turnbull and Dr. Rubin. It's important to keep talking about it, because then you hope that by talking about it and presenting all the various scenarios and the various situations, that people can somehow or the other identify themselves in those situations and then present for help. True in the BVI, I mean, I've been back now since 2000 and don't even remember, 2000. And over the period of time, we've seen more persons being willing to present for services or self-present. So more people are willing to step forward and say, okay, things are not going well. I recognize the change, or my friend or my spouse or my partner has said to me that, you're behaving differently, or even at work, workplace referrals are about persons previously functioning well at work, not functioning well. We know they have some sort of stressor going on, and therefore we see the changes in the behavior. So, we are seeing more persons and more referrals. So we know that the message is getting through. But it remains an area that persons, we all as human beings, always hope that we don't get to that place.
Are you able to tell from your practice and your interactions and what you see where we are as a whole community, as a BVI community, in terms of mental wellness? Are we, and I know that we present with different things. Somebody might present with fear of enclosed spaces. they might be fine with other things. Somebody might present with inability to manage little small problems.
Right.
You know, so they all across the spectrum. But are you able, and people in the mental health profession, are they able to assess where we are, general population, do a general population assessment?
Are we able to do that now? Or we haven't done it.
But yeah, but
Can we?
Can you do it? Can you tell how mentally healthy or well the population of the territory is?
We can do it. I mean, we haven't done it in any formalized way in terms of, you know, doing surveys, for example. You know, in other places, there are prevalent surveys that you can do that will tell you, you know, what percentage of the population may be or have had, you know, any symptoms suggestive of any mental health condition. We haven't done it in a formalized way like that. But I think there are indicators that you can look at that could suggest to you, you know, how we may be doing. And of course, that's more an informal way of assessing what is happening and how persons are feeling. So, you know, we can look, for example, at the number of referrals and the number of new cases presenting to the community mental health services. That would give you an indicator. We can look at, you know, the number of services or how many persons we're catering to, for example, within your school system. I mean, you know, mental health is about the whole life spectrum. So if you assess what's happening in all of your services that cater to, you know, persons in the different in the different stages of life, you know, the information will be there. We know. Right now, a lot of my focus, of course, is on, you know, physical health, medical pieces because of my role at the Health Services Authority. We know that we have more persons presenting with chronic conditions, okay? Terminally ill, cancer in stages, persons with chronic medical conditions that are complicated. So persons who've had hypertensive heart disease who now have heart failure, okay? And so their level of functioning is decreased. We know we have more persons who are utilizing our specialist services at the hospital. So more persons are seeing the neurologist, the rheumatologist. So that any chronic medical conditions are linked with persons having certain types of mental health disorders, such as depression. Depression is very common in persons who may have any chronic medical illness, right? We can look at the number of admissions we have to our behavioral health unit. Okay, so if we look, there are various, you know, you can look in all of your institutions, look at the uptake of services. If you know how those services may be linked to, you know, persons having various types of mental health disorders, then you can guesstimate. It gives you an indication of what you may have in your population. And then, of course, you look at your socioeconomic situation, okay, because we know that life stressors, any types of stressors in your everyday life, will also put persons at risk for suffering from, you know, a mental disorder. So, you know, increased job stress, you know, there's more competition, there's more uncertainty generally, you know, in the economy because of, you know, we've had places closing, people losing jobs. And, you know, the concern in the atmosphere, whether we want to believe it or not, about what our true financial situation is.
And what the future might bring.
What the future might bring and what that will mean about me as an individual and my ability to survive. That creates a certain level of uncertainty and insecurity. That creates anxiety, okay? And that creates stress. It creates fear, okay? So that's where we're at now.
Okay.
So you could
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what I want. What I wanted to talk about. But we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue along those lines. And I want to know. And I'm hearing you, and I'm sensing that you have, you sit back and you look at all these things, this information that you have, whether it's anecdotal or just experiential, and you say to yourself something about the society. I want to know what that is in your mind that you say to the society about the society when you add up all of those indicators.
okay.
Keep it locked right here to Spotlight. We'll be right back.
Spotlight is brought to you by CCT BVI, Life Unlimited, and the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, the official Bank of Paradise.
Facebook, Instagram, you name it, I have it.
I use it for my internet, Skype, WhatsApp, YouTube, everything.
I can upload photos, share files, have meetings.
The data is ridiculously fast.
And when they switch to this LTE, wow, the speed is incredible.
Unlimited, unlimited, unlimited.
I don't have to go, how much data do I have? It's there. The other networks, I can WhatsApp on this one.
I absolutely love it. You have to get it, BVI.
Thank you, CCT.
The nice thing about the National Bank is that they are actually true to their concept of being a national bank in terms of understanding the needs of all islands. They understood what we needed at New Horizon Ferry Services in expanding our offerings to improve shipping across our islands. Because we have been in this business now for many years and established a good relationship with the bank, they saw our track record and they understood what we needed to expand our business, and together we have formed a great partnership that is helping our business to grow.
Paradise means being able to expand our business at the right time.
National Bank of the Virgin Islands, the official Bank of Paradise.
Zika, chikungunya, and dengue are all spread by the Aedes aegypti mosquito. Protect yourself. Wear clothes that fully cover your body. Use insect repellent spray or ban. Some of them are really crude. Cover empty soda bottles and dispose of them properly. Juice boxes, wrappers, and soda cans too. And cover any container that can collect water. Remember, mosquitoes like to hide in dark, messy places, so keep your rooms tidy as well. Clean up, prevent, protect.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm here with Dr. Samuel, Chief Director of Medical Services at the BVI HSA, and we're talking about mental wellness in the Virgin Islands. And we left off with Dr. Samuel giving us a whole litany of indicators that puts all of us, I suspect, on the spectrum of, of mental wellness or illness, depends on how you want to look at it. But having said all those things that you just said about all the various indicators that tells us whether we are coping, the anxiety that we might be feeling on the job, the anxiety we feel based on the conditions of the society. I mean, would you sit back and say, man, we are some really not crazy, not mentally ill, but not well people. I'm trying to make it as politically correct
as possible.
Because in my mind I was saying, but man, we some really crazy people here.
Yes, yes, yes.
I mean, do you get that? How you get that sense of a personal assessment from your experience that, as Virgin Islanders and as people living in the Virgin Islands, we are facing serious daily challenges in coping?
I would say that when I look at all that's going on around us and know all of the challenges that we're facing, I say to myself, we have a brewing problem that is going to, if we don't actively intervene, to create situations that will alleviate some of the tensions, we could be in some trouble. And I mean, I don't necessarily want to be, I'm not trying to, exaggerate or, create any kind of, but, mental health, there's something called determinants of mental health, right? And those determinants, you look at social factors, you look at psychological factors, you look at biological factors, okay? And notice how that is working, right? A big part of it is social factors. So it's about our social situations that we have to exist in on a day-to-day basis. Biological factors are important, yes, because genetics, a part of mental health determination has to do with genetics. What's in your family line, and what conditions, you may have had family members suffering with, and therefore how much you may be at risk, right? And then there's the psychological factors, which has to do with, personality, how we're made up, and therefore our inherent ability to cope with various situations. But our the social factors weigh in quite heavily. And so we cannot ignore, what's going on around us. And it's not anything unique to the BVI. Okay, it is happening everywhere. In the US, for example, there's a demand for mental health practitioners because, in all various areas, from the war veterans coming back home to issues in school, issues with families, we need mental health practitioners. It's a similar situation here. But our challenge in the BVI is that one of our major challenges as a community, we tend to be secretive about health or health issues that we may be dealing with. And two, because of that, then that's a part of the reason I would say we tend to go into denial about what may be happening. We are concerned about, how others may see us, what others may think about us. And therefore we prefer to live as if, these things don't exist or these things are not happening. But they're happening, and we have a brewing problem. We know that. I know that. I mean, when I came back here initially, I was one psychiatrist. Population at that time we hadn't gotten to 30,000 yet. And I always remember when I was going away to school, one of my advisors tried to discourage me from doing psychiatry because their thinking was we don't need psychiatrists. We don't have a need for psychiatrists in the BVI. Where I'm at now, we have 2 psychiatrists, myself and another person. We have a number of clinical psychologists, and we're still feeling that we need more. That speaks to a need.
Yes, the demand is growing.
The demand is growing.
Demand is growing. Now, there seems to be those of us who are advanced on the spectrum, perhaps, of mental unwellness, and particularly those of us who are in influential positions. I'm getting the sense that we are stirring up a lot of the anxiety in the society. Some of us who want power of some kind. Some of us who want material wealth. Some of us, who have these various individual
Agendas.
self-serving goals, creating a condition in the society, that social atmosphere, if you will, that is creating a lot of anxiety. If you, and it's something that we were talking about off air, if you listen to the House of Assembly, for example, you hear elected representatives having discussions that instead of helping to solve a problem, or instead of saying, these are the challenges we have, how do we mitigate these challenges, how do we make things better, it's about us against them, we're competing for these votes, we want to make it seem as though we are more intelligent, we want to make it seem as though somebody else is doing something wrong. You know, and so there's this back and forth, this competition and this anxiety. And then, of course, there's a yelling and there's a ranting and there's, you know, all this carrying on. And then you have the media, generally, all the media, without exception, picking up on the various themes and topics and so on, and sensationalizing it, creating a sort of, I mean, when I creating anxiety, creating social anxiety in the community, when I read or hear some of the stuff said in the House of Assembly, or when I read stuff in the newspaper or online or Facebook or social, wherever, I mean, a lot of that stuff sometimes is painful to me. You know, I'm saying, wow, you know, that hurts.
Yes,
I mean, why is he saying that? Why are they doing that?
Right.
How is that a benefit to the society? And that, I mean, is that something that's real, or is that something I'm personally interpreting?
Well, I think
people thrive on that and it's fine. You know,
well, I mean, you know, you have various types of, you know, every community, you know, is made up of different individuals with different personalities, and persons have to survive in the situation that they're in. And we all will engage in behaviors that we hope will help us to survive. So whatever sphere we're in, you know, our behaviors in those roles are about surviving and trying to make the best of our lives. So, you know, sometimes that will lead to, you know, persons engaging in behaviors that don't necessarily improve or help with interpersonal relationships, how we relate to each other, how we're supportive to each other. You know, and there is some research out there in the mental health field that talks about one of the most important mitigating factors that protects against the development of mental illness, right, is about social support. Okay, so it's about how much an individual feels supported, whether it's in their circle or in the society as a whole. And that's one of the most important factors. So, you know, that will tell you immediately, you know, which groups within your society would be vulnerable. Because if you have groups that are in the society who don't have a lot of social supports, then they're going to be vulnerable. But each of us as individuals, you know, we live here, we call here home, and, you know, particularly if you have a vested interest here, right, be Islander, belonger, you know, long-time resident, you know, you depend on, to some level, to have the level of support from the community as a part of your well-being. And, you know, when we engage in behaviors within the society that, you know, that is not supportive, whether we're attacking various groups or, we are discriminating in any form or fashion, all of those basically create stressors within the society. And therefore, will, it puts your community at risk. So, there are various things that happen within the society that we should be concerned about. We should be concerned about, the negative themes, or the lack of positive images, okay, or the lack of, there's so many good things that happen within our society. So many persons here who have talent and who are doing great things. But if you look at what's portrayed, how much of that do you see portrayed in your general media? So, how much of that do we talk about in some regularity? So that you bring some sense of positive thinking and encouragement to the society. Yes, you will always have the naysayers, right? In every society you will have those, but it's about the balance.
But and I want to ask you a direct question, and I would like a yes or no answer.
Okay.
Right?
Let me hear the question.
Before I ask you that question, though, in line with what you just said, can we report on our society in a way where it's more constructive? It's not that we have to not say something is wrong when it's wrong. Or
you can be constructive.
Or that something needs to be corrected.
Right.
It's not we shouldn't say that. But can we say it in a way where it doesn't create pain, mental pain, psychological pain, psychological stress, that people begin to feel burdened by what is being said and read and heard? Is that possible?
Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. I mean, you can engage in constructive criticism. Criticism is important, right? But it can be done in a way that's constructive, that brings, so out of it, you get solutions.
So people feel like they want to engage in correcting the situation.
Precisely. I mean,
not in harming each other, but in correcting the situation.
Exactly. We have challenges in the BVI. We are part of a global economy, so we will have challenges, and those challenges are going to continue, right? But there needs to be a certain level of discussion about what the challenges are and what the possible solutions are.
We should be banding together to make those things
exactly,
right.
Exactly. And you can do that.
Survive and to thrive.
Absolutely. And you can do that without being, without attacking or, becoming very personal in how we deal with situations. We're dealing with, this is a situation, okay? The possible solutions are A, B, and C. That's my opinion. Your opinion may be different. Okay, so what's the best solution? And engage in healthy debate.
Okay. Direct question. Our leaders, politicians, media, persons in influence in various aspects of life, pastors, churches, all of our what we call our civil society right now. Are we creating an environment of mentally unwell humans?
You said that's a yes or no question?
Yes or no? Yeah. From where you sit and from what your observances are, and from a psychiatric, clinical psychological perspective, are we, the persons who have the influence in all aspects of life, not just, and I don't want to make it look like it's politicians. I even shouldn't have mentioned politicians. But all of us who are influencers in this society, are we creating a society of mentally unwell people?
I wouldn't say we're creating that society. No. I would say that within this society, we have, as I said earlier, we have challenges that we're experiencing as a society, one as a part of a global economy, two as a community that has grown exponentially in a short space of time. That brings with it significant challenges, okay? So that is what we've been given. That's what we have. The way that we are dealing with the challenges that are resulting as a result of our society as it is, I would say that we don't have a comprehensive, united approach to dealing with the challenges. And, so the uncertainties continue. People continue to be unsure of, various factors, as I talked about earlier. And therefore, if we don't see, if we are not able to look and see, okay, we have a plan. This is a plan. This is a plan we're working on. I have a role in this plan. Okay, my role in making this plan work is A, B, C, and D. Okay, so if you don't see that, then the anxieties will continue. And once those anxieties continue, then the persons within the population who are at risk, right, will be more likely then to develop, various of any sort of mental disorder.
We got to take another break. But I'd like to continue the discussion along the lines of what appears to be, in my view, increasing competition. And along with the increasing competition for resources, for jobs, for lifestyle, for status, for prestige, and along with the increasing competition in those areas comes a selfishness that is helping to create some of the anxiety and prevent us from perhaps even healing. So I want to explore how true that is and if that is really the case.
Okay.
Don't go away. It's going to get better. Stay right here with us.
Spotlight is brought to you by Tortola Concrete Limited and CTL Home Center, the best products for the lowest prices, period.
Welcome to the new Clarence Summers Limited Home Center in Fish Bay. You can expect so much great things out of this new facilities. Our new paint department featuring Valspar paints, our brand new drive-through lumberyard, new plumbing department, our new lawn and garden department, featuring plants by Groundworks BVI. That's one of the many collaborations that we've actually done as a company, trying to basically do as much as possible with more of the local companies as we possibly can, and basically put everything under one roof. Remember, CTL is your new destination store. That's absolutely fabulous. Lots of parking, comfortable location, very clean environment. You come in and you feel at home, and the service level is something that we are definitely working on continuously to bring that experience to you from the moment you get out your car to the moment you leave the registers heading back to your car. And we just love being able to serve the people of the territory. We love being here for nearly 50 years doing this, and we look forward to being here for an additional 50 or more years serving the people of the British Virgin Islands. I'm standing in front of our new Valspar paint department, and you notice it's strategically positioned in the store, so it's pretty much one of the first departments that you run into as you enter into CTL. I mean, here we have the ability to mix over 1,200 colors to satisfy any homeowner's taste at all possible. Valspar is one of the largest paint companies in the world, And we were fortunate enough when they picked us to be the distributors in the British Virgin Islands. We have a great staff. Erasmus, who actually runs our paint department, really knows what he's doing, extremely helpful. And our job in this department is to really satisfy all your color needs, all your repairs as it's relative to basically updating your home, whether it's renovation or whether it's a new home. And we're really excited about this department. Get online, see us. We're constantly uploading all our new products and specials and everything online. So please do visit us online.
Serving the community for over 25 years, Tortola Concrete Limited is the leading producer of concrete products in the BVI. With grades of 3,000 to 5,000 PSI, Tortola Concrete ready-mix quality unmatched in the industry, and we can mix to your specifications. Our aggregates are clean through our unique washing process for our smooth, clean mix. And our special chilling process makes our concrete crack resistant. Tortola Concrete Limited is the concrete company for all your quality concrete products. Gravel, road base, face stone, boulders, armor rock, coarse sand, terrace, and the cleanest, strongest, crack-resistant, ready-mix concrete. Tortola Concrete batch plan serve you Monday to Saturday, 7 a.m. until the last load. Our knowledgeable, effective staff gives you free estimate and delivers on time to any location. Contact Tortola Concrete at 494-3259, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Conveniently located in Parkwood Pond near the BVI electricity plant. At Tortola Concrete Limited, the strength is in the mix.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm here with Dr. Samuel, and we are talking about mental wellness in the society.
All right.
And I left off asking you about the increase in. It's like I said, competition is a I guess a clinical word. Mm-hmm. It's like a war in the society. Mm-hmm. Like we just like. We tearing each other apart. This is the competition for everything, mm-hmm. And I remember a time when this wasn't the case. Mm-hmm. So I know what the before and the after is, and I think that gives me, and I think many persons in my age group,
right,
a unique perspective mm-hmm. on what the possibilities are, mm-hmm. and whether success, collective success, mm-hmm. and collective success through individual success, mm-hmm. and harmony, love for each other, cannot coexist in the same space and time. We got to be aggressive, vicious, angry, mm-hmm. grabbing, mm-hmm. In order for us to succeed. We can't be, I can't do this. Let me see if I could help June to do this. Mm-hmm. How can I think if June did this way, she'll be successful. Mm-hmm. Why not just give her that idea? I'm not in that. I'm doing something else over here.
That's right.
Why can I help her to succeed? Mm-hmm. Nah, I mean, let me see if I could. That's my idea. Let me see if I could grab.
Yes.
But I mean, I want that job. You want that job.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I mean.
But I mean, for me, the question is, what is it about? Is it the way that our society is structured, or is it the experiences that we have within the society, or is it, that feeling of feeling threatened? I mean, what is it, if those are the behaviors that we're observing, what is it that's causing us to behave in that way? And that's something that I think we have to try to tease out, so that then we understand what we do to reverse it.
So is it fair that the society is being filled with fear of loss, fear of not succeeding, fear of not achieving your goals, some fear that I'm going to lose something that's really important to me. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. I don't know. Because all those things that you said, all those things you said seem to be seem to be factors.
Well, there are various fears that exist within the society. I mean, one of the things I know, one of the discussions we have all of the time, for example, is when you look at the ratio of BVI landers to non-BVI landers living within the country, and you know, that whole sense of being outnumbered. And okay, so and what then does that make us as BVI landers feel? And therefore, you know, because of that, then how are we reacting to situations around us with other people who live here? And then how does that then generate other kinds of behaviors within the society? So I think we have to look at, you know, what are the factors within the society that are creating those behaviors, and then how do we need to, what systems do we need to put in place to support persons, to bring us to a place where we feel we can live comfortably and harmoniously with each other without that sense of that perceived threat, you know, real or unreal, that some people may be feeling. And remember that all of this is occurring within the context of, you know, persons progressing through their life and going through the various phases of their life. And with each phase comes anxieties. So as you move from your working life to your retirement life, right? That comes with a certain level of change and anxiety associated with it. As you retire and you get older, you know, the persons in this population who are aging, right, have anxieties about the aging process, about how they're going to get cared for when they're older, about services that may or may not be available for them, how they're going to access those services, can they afford those services? So
tell me about it.
What, you feeling that?
You see my hair, right?
And I'm entering into that phase, so maybe that's why I'm feeling that too. I don't know. So there are all of these. Everything is going on at the same time. You know, our society, some of our systems and our processes and our supports do not keep pace and have not kept pace. The infrastructure has not kept pace with the demands of a growing population and all of the social and other supports that are needed for that population. So, you know, people have their various anxieties at all levels.
And, well, are we making provisions and preparations and to develop the services that's going to be needed for us to mitigate those challenges? And then where are the resources to come from? If we, all we thinking about is our individual, our small space and the self, and not in terms of a preparation for others, for the collective, for later on, or even for now, the services that we need, whether it's education, healthcare, infrastructure, whatever, social services generally. We are not making, we seem to not, I mean, we're fussing about everything that we have to give for social services. If it's not something that's going to make money, we don't want to deal with it. I mean, we will borrow millions of dollars to build infrastructure that we perceive that will make us more money.
Right.
But we never have enough money to mitigate those social challenges that you just outlined. We won't borrow money for those, and we won't allocate resources for those things. It's always, you know, the minimum. The minimum, and a Band-Aid and a Band-Aid, and while everything continues to fester. So, I mean, what do we do? You know, I'm wondering if it's not our fault, the older persons who are not stepping up, coming forward, who are those of us who are understanding the situation, making it known, and saying, hey, people, what are we doing here? You know, where are we going? What is the plan? How is this society going to maintain a good quality of life for all persons in the society?
We need a comprehensive, cohesive plan that speaks to all of the various pieces, because you know they're all interconnected. So you know, I came here tonight to talk about mental health, but when we think about mental health, do we think of mental health in the context in which I'm discussing it? This is a broad perspective of mental health.
Different perspective
this
of mental
is
health.
not about, you know, people being mentally ill and, you know, what
And
we're doing
walking
for
the
these
street
people
and what
and
kind
the
of
people
drugs we got
walking the
them
street.
on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, that's the narrow view of, and we want a minister to provide a place to put these people. Okay, so we provide a 5-bedroom place and put the 5 people, and then we have another 10 people coming.
Yeah.
How you deal with that? Okay,
You build more bedrooms.
You build more rooms, right? Instead of, okay, what structure, what system do I need to put in place to be able to support the people in the population who are vulnerable? You will always have vulnerable groups within your population. You will always have persons who are at the lower end of your socioeconomic scale. You will always have the persons who are less educated. Those are two factors associated with, you know, risk for mental disorders. How do we support that group? What do we need to put in place so that, you know, anybody who's at risk, we have a system that will pick them up and support them to develop their potential as far as it can go, not making them dependent on the state. Because, you know, persons who are walking the street who are mentally ill, who we think are mentally ill, everybody has some sort of potential. But how do we, you know, support them in developing whatever potential they may have so that they're not completely dependent on the state for support? And I mean, you could look at all various areas, because that applies to the elderly, it applies to persons who develop disabilities, it applies to persons who become physically ill, you know, and not having a network to capture them. If you can't run a full-time job, then can you do a part-time job, you know? So it applies across the society. And so you have to have a plan of how you do that.
You just said something, and something popped into my head. You said there will always be the vulnerable in the society.
Yeah, Jesus had said that.
Yeah, but you know,
poor,
well, I don't know.
The poor and widowed among us, the poor and the.
Well, I think that.
Even he recognized that.
Well, I think that he recognized. I think that he recognized the poor in society and the need for salvation. So
well, we don't talk about that tonight. Okay.
But we are, because this is what this is really.
This is part of the salvation.
This is what this is really about.
Right.
Because when you say is in the fact that we tend to accept that there will always be the vulnerable in the society, that we allow ourselves to be promiscuous, or to allow for this vulnerable in the community, instead of saying there doesn't. I mean, do we really have to have vulnerable in the community? Is that an inevitability? Is that a natural order of things, that there are always going to be people, that there always have to be persons in the society that are vulnerable, that have challenges, that can't make the grade? Or is it because we have created a system that creates vulnerable?
Okay.
And since we accepting that, no, we ain't putting the necessary resources to make sure that there are no vulnerable.
Right.
We just accept a percentage of vulnerable and go to mitigate that percentage.
No, but even if we don't try to mitigate. How do we try to mitigate?
Well, I mean, with our limited social services that we develop, and whatever resources we allocate to those services.
But you do it from
that's a type of mitigation.
Right, but you're doing it from a place of, you know, there's a fragmented approach to the problem. So to get to a place of, okay, you know, we do have the descriptions of, having vulnerable groups within your community. Now, if we decide as a community that, look, we want to develop a different system that allows all persons living within the community to achieve their fullest potential, then we have to put that system in place.
But that's my point.
Yeah, we would have to put that, but that would have to be an intentional act.
Of course, but we will, and then that's what I'm saying, we will not put that system in place as long as we accept that the existing system is all we have. Or all that works. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, if we say, oh, well, listen, going to be crazy people, so there's nothing you could do about that, so let's just make provisions for whoever come crazy.
Right.
Instead of saying, listen, there doesn't have to be any crazy people we like. Zero tolerance for crazy people. We're going to make sure that we have these systems in place that nobody's going to become crazy. People ain't born crazy, and the only reason why they're crazy because
the stresses within the
system
society.
Create. Right. So this system ain't working because as long as there's crazy people, the system ain't working.
Well, you would have to definitely have a plan to implement to mitigate for that.
Yes.
We'd have to think. We'd have to. We'd have to change our way of thinking about how our society should be and how we want our society, persons in the society, to coexist.
Now, is there a historic context, though, as a people in the Virgin Islands, particularly of the composition of our population, the racial composition of our population? Are we coming out of a historic context of mental ill health or mental illness? Are we coming out of? I mean, I know you know. I know you see a smile. I know
where you're trying to go.
Yeah, yes. But because we're talking about mental wellness, and we are not. Can we experience some semblance of mental wellness or be on a higher spectrum of mental health? On the higher end, Can we be on the higher end as opposed to the lower end or the middle end? Can we be on the higher end of the spectrum of mental health, given our historic context as people of African descent who've gone through the trauma of the transatlantic slave trade and the plantation era?
Can we be?
Yeah, can we ever be well without dealing with that issue?
Well,
we haven't been dealing with that issue.
We haven't been dealing with the issue because we have the divided thinking about slavery and the role that it plays in who we are as a people now. I heard a professor recently giving a lecture, and he talked about how our lifestyle when we were slaves and some of the eating habits that we were forced to endure then, how his thoughts about why we're seeing some of what we're seeing now in the Caribbean with regards to some of the chronic diseases that we're seeing and the non-response to particular types of medications. And I thought that was because I hadn't heard that before, and that's something that I want to look some more into. But the information is out there about that experience, the slavery experience, and the research about the post-traumatic slave syndrome is out there. But as a people, we haven't gotten to the place where we accept that that's possibly contributing to where we are now. So unless we have a discussion about it and are willing to look at it, then I don't see us moving forward with in that thought process.
Yeah, but as a mental health practitioner and others such as yourself, have you ever taken the time to sit back and say, let me see, low self-esteem, how does that apply to our ability to be mentally well? Self-hatred. How does that apply to us being mentally well? Lack of knowledge of proper diet and nutrition. How does that contribute to making us not mentally ill, not mentally well? You know, do you all sit back and say, well, let me look at these people from in a collective, a broader context? Because to me, and another question, and instead of giving you my opinion, the other question is, do you see similarities in behavior across the collective that speaks to a historic context? They say, well, I might be treating this individual, but I only could get so far on the spectrum with this individual because there are certain generational issues and experiences that this individual has had that I'm not going to be able to mitigate. I mean, do you guys sit back and think that?
Well, I can say that we do.
Is there a psychiatrist association in the BVI?
No, there isn't. There isn't. There's a Caribbean Psychiatrists Association, and that's, that is not something that a discussion that I've heard us having across the Caribbean as psychiatrists about, the role that our historical experience is playing in how we're presenting now psychologically as a group. And I think it's an area that we should talk about because, again, there's research out there that talks about it. So, it's an area that even I myself, I'm learning more about. We know about all the individual pieces that you mentioned, low self-esteem, the poor nutrition, and we know the links that those have with, with individuals who may have psychiatric or mental disorders. But, in terms of having a discussion about it, and the next step is, okay, what are the interventions that we need to do then?
Treatment modalities.
Yes, what treatment modalities we may need to look at. That's not something that's taking place in a formal way in the Caribbean that I'm aware of.
So how are we going to get well? We're going to continue to be sick and accept our sickness as a reality, and and continue to be unable to deal with the increasing stressors. Because to me, the stressors are increasing. I don't see no decrease. I don't see no decrease in stressors in the society. And the older you get, the more intense the stressors get. I mean, I'm experiencing it.
Yeah.
So I know what I'm talking about.
Well, we hope that. There are persons coming behind me. We have younger persons coming up in the population. So hopefully, our young people out there who are studying psychology and, who are in the mental health field, hopefully they can bring that level of discussion back and
but we here now,
move it forward.
Shouldn't we? Why are we waiting for the children to come with the solution and discuss this thing? We here now, it's in our face. We recognizing it. It's out in the air. The research has been done. We're looking at it. Why are we waiting for our children to come from behind to deal with it? I mean, when we deal with it now. But one other thing I want to get to before the clock starts to terrorize me.
That's not a good thing. Anyway,
is the church.
Oh dear.
Yeah, God.
Oh, okay.
God. How important a role is the understanding of God play in our mental wellness?
That's a big question.
Because I know psychiatrists like to discard God and spirituality.
We do?
Oh, that's the sense I get. I might be wrong. I'm sure you're going to correct me. That, listen, leave God out of this. There's certain stressors in the society. There's certain environmental factors. There's certain nutritional factors. There's all kind of factors. And then, we need a medication or we need a social service. But we never talk about a relationship with God that would help us to deal with whatever the trauma will develop in our life.
Well,
and that's like even to the point where you see the trauma as a lesson to be learned, and you could just sit back and say, okay, well, that's what God planned there for me. All right, cool, no sweat. God gonna take care of it, cause I know He been taking care of me for 60 odd years, and you know I ain't stressing at all. I can just what He play out, I can go with. I mean, is that level of, and I would call that faith. Is that level of faith in a God important in us dealing with the stressors?
There's a growing body of research out there that looks at the role of spirituality, right, in mental health, and not just mental health, but physical health as well, and the importance of persons having something they believe in, or someone, right, that they believe in, that they can use as a way of coping, understanding, and trying to bring to some sort of rational understanding their experience and what they may be dealing with as an individual. So, not all psychiatrists discard God, because you do have psychiatrists. I've interacted with psychiatrists who are of the Christian faith or of other faiths, and we in my own practice, you try to find a way to incorporate that into as a part of the intervention that you're doing, but you have to meet the person where they're at. So some persons may not have that whole concept of God and faith and spiritual beliefs and their understanding of their existence in the world and having a spiritual existence, and some people don't have that. So sometimes people need help getting to that, and it can be used as a part of the various techniques of the meditation, the positive thought, practicing faith. All those things are tied in with the whole practice of spirituality. So there's a role for it. Not every mental health practitioner necessarily would use it, but there is the research out there that supports.
Well, can it be used as a medication? That's my question.
Well,
can you make an intention, a conscious decision to say, there is an understanding of God that works and I'm using God in the English, I guess, tradition, because everybody got their own word, right? So, but there's a and the question of who or what God actually is another issue to be determined.
Yes.
Right? And so can a psychiatrist or a mental health practitioner say, there is a system of belief or knowledge, not belief, knowledge of God, that entity, that being within a human, in the mind, that is useful as a practice, to understand, and as a practice that will enable all individuals to mitigate all challenges facing them on earth. Is that something that you could investigate, something that you could look into, and something that you could say, I'm going to use this as a medication, I'm going to use it as a prescription, I'm going to use this as a cure, as a treatment?
It's used, you can use it as a part of an intervention, yes, as a part of a treatment approach with a patient, but and I'm kind of being very careful about how I say this,
telling you that you ain't supposed to be using this in psychiatry?
No. Actually, the opposite. I think we live within a community, and as a Caribbean people, we have a particular view of church and religion that sometimes we use to prevent us from seeking out appropriate help when we need it. So yes, an understanding of God and your faith and spirituality, is important as a part of your whole recovery, right? When you're having an acute crisis. But sometimes we do it in the opposite. So we want to use that to the exclusion of getting professional help.
Okay. All right. Okay. The whole
do you get me?
I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm having problems with it, but I'm hearing what you're saying. I gotta take a break. Lord have mercy, I'm being terrorized. But we're gonna come right back with more Spotlight in a wrap up right after this.
Spotlight is brought to you by Ocean Conversion BVI Limited and BVI Tourist Board. We are one BVI.
Here in the Virgin Islands, we are blessed to live and work in paradise. Paradise just doesn't mean our tranquil blue waters and green hills. National Bank of the Virgin Islands defines paradise as any place or condition that fulfills your aspirations.
To me, paradise means knowing that I will have a financing partner when I'm ready to open my first business.
I feel confident that I can manage whatever life throws my way because I know my bank will be with me every step of the way.
That's why I choose National Bank of the Virgin Islands, the official bank of paradise.
My future's looking so bright, 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 with the official bank of paradise, paradise.
National Bank of the Virgin Islands, the official bank of paradise.
Facebook, Instagram, you name it, I have it.
I use it for my internet, Skype, WhatsApp, YouTube, everything.
I can upload photos, share files, have meetings.
The data is ridiculously fast.
And when they switch to this LTE, wow, the speed is incredible.
Unlimited, unlimited, unlimited.
I don't have to go, how much data do I have? It's there. The other networks, I could WhatsApp on this one.
I absolutely love it. You have to get it, BVI.
Thank you, CCT.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I don't know if I'm having a good time or not, but this is certainly interesting. and if you missed it, you'll be able to catch it on Facebook. But I've been having a conversation with Dr. Joan Samuel. She's the Director of Medical Services at the Health Service Authority and a psychiatrist. With her own practice. What's the name of your practice?
5 Doctors Medical.
5 Doctors Medical.
And Wellness.
5 Doctors
Medical and Wellness Center.
Yes, the owner director of 5 Doctors
Medical and Wellness
Center.
Yes.
Yes, and we are not talking about anything that we wanted to talk about. That we had planned to talk about.
Nothing on the list of questions.
Nothing on the list of questions. We have not. This conversation has taken on a life of its own, and we have not spoke about anything that we were supposed to speak about at a list of questions, right? So, but it's quite fascinating. I was talking about God's role as or spirituality's role as a treatment. And you said, and I think you left off where you were talking about the tendency of persons to embrace God, but neglect professional help.
Right.
Is that accurate? That's a paraphrase, but is that accurate? And I'm saying, and when I hear that, I found a problem with it in that I'm thinking or I want to think, that there's no separation between the God treatment and the professional treatment, because the professional treatment should be the God treatment.
I hear what
You know
you're
what I'm saying?
yes, I hear what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying. But in speaking to the public,
So help me explain that.
yeah, in speaking to the public, like I said, because we have a lot of concerns about individuals who we have to have an understanding of God, or concept of God, or relationship with Him, and how that relationship sustains us when we're having crises, or sustains us on an everyday basis. Because if it's a relationship, then
It shouldn't just be a
It
crisis.
shouldn't be only when we have a crisis
Right.
that we're looking at this.
Yes.
And also, us as spiritual beings, and what that means in that whole relationship that we have with God. Now, but we live in a world where the human body is not perfect. Okay, and the human body is exposed to various stressors, and those stressors have an effect on what is happening with how our system functions physiologically, chemically, and in other ways. And so, our behaviors. So our behaviors, all the societal stressors, those have an effect on our body, and that will bring about changes in our body that can have us developing various conditions,
But those changes in the
including
body,
mental conditions.
and those changes in our body come through the mind. I mean, whatever happens to us physically comes through the mind, doesn't
Well,
it?
you could say that it comes, and our experience of our perception of our experiences that we're having, but nonetheless the changes happen physically. So, my experience is that if we develop diabetes and hypertension, we're accepting of that, and we're willing to deal with that and still deal with our spiritual existence and God, right? And the two can coexist. We don't have a problem with that. But when it comes to dealing with mental health disorders, we then want to separate that out. And we don't feel that those two can coexist. And I don't agree with that. So we need to understand that the same way that you would seek help for your hypertension, and that you seek professional help and get treatment, the same way if you have a mental health disorder, you seek whatever treatment is necessary. And a part of treatment for any condition of the mind or body should include looking at your relationship with God, and your understanding of the existence in the world, why you're here, your purpose in life, etc. All of those, and how that is demonstrated in how you live your life on a day-to-day basis. Because if you practice some of those concepts, then you will naturally then have a decrease in your stressors. If you're taking care of your body, if you believe your body is a temple, then you're not going to abuse your body by using all the things that are not good for it.
If you had
Or
a good
shouldn't.
relationship with God, you wouldn't have diabetes.
Okay, I'm not willing to go that far. I know that's where you're trying to go, but I'm not willing to go that far.
You wouldn't be obese.
Well, I'm not willing to go that far because the thing
the
is,
way the sin is dead.
but there are certain factors.
I'm gonna cut it right there.
Yeah, there are certain factors that we have no control over, and to me, those factors then put us at risk for all of these conditions that you can develop. And I do not want the public to feel that, or to go away with the message that, okay, if you're good Christian and you believe in God, that somehow or the other none of these conditions are going to happen to you, because that is not true. And we already have that struggle in the population, and we need to move away from that.
Okay, and we under the tyranny of the clock. So I ain't gonna push that anymore, except to say that perhaps we need to look into, as a psychiatrist, from a scientific perspective, look into who or what God is and what roles God and that concept would play in mental wellness, because I see, well, I don't know. That's my personal thing, is of course that belief is only the threshold to knowledge, and you can't really make any serious decisions based on belief, because the nature of belief is ignorance and doubt. And whoever want to take that,
well, I understand what you're saying,
deal
but
with that, how they want to deal with it.
Yes,
that's their
you'd have
business.
to explain that a little bit.
Yeah,
but I hear what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
So belief is not the answer. Knowledge is the answer. Experiencing that relationship is the answer.
Right.
And I think that there's a scientific basis for that experience, for having that experience that can work in the treatment of mental wellness. What it is we were supposed to be discussing?
Well, yes, you had a whole long list.
You had a whole long list. It's true. Any short thing you could say in the 2 minutes that you want to get, any message I want to get out?
No, I mean, I think just to encourage persons to pay more attention to their mental health, their mental and their psychological health, and to actively seek out services. There are many options out there, private sector, public sector. You have the options out there. We have professionals here who are able to deal with most things that would present. But we have to come to a place of knowledge of self. Okay, we understand who we are. We get to know ourselves. We are in touch with what we are feeling on a day-to-day basis, and recognize when things are not going well, and seek help early. And that's what we're promoting: early intervention and early presentation. Sometimes it just means to come in and talk. Sometimes you just need a different perspective. Okay, because you seek help doesn't mean that you will get medication. I know that's one of the myths out there. Okay, but the intervention and the professional help is important, and we could keep persons on the wellness path.
Well, we have to continue the discussion. I mean, I think we've just started to open up a different aspect, a different perspective on mental health. And the discussion needs to continue. And I think that God had to discuss exactly what we were supposed to discuss. We discussed,
right?
Because that's my concept.
Yes.
That whatever happens, it cannot happen without God making it happen.
Right. It's not an accident.
Yeah,
never an accident.
It's never an accident. Yeah, it's either a lesson or a blessing.
That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm really excited that you came by and we had the discussion. It's something I think that we need to continue, and I look forward to having you back several times.
Yes, sir. Invite me anytime. I'll come by. I'm happy to talk about mental health, physical health. I'm very passionate about the health of BVI, the health of our population, and we have many opportunities for improvement in health as a population, but a lot of that is about how we as individuals take personal responsibility for our health.
Thank you, Dr. Savia.
You're welcome.
Yes, indeed. Next week, the spotlight will shine on the Rotary Club's 720 District Governor Harish Ramchandani and his service plans for his term in office. And we're going to be hearing about, a lot about what Rotarians are doing in this district, in the 7020 district, the Caribbean region, and the BVI, and the service they're providing, and what some of the goals are coming up in the future. So make sure you tune in to Spotlight next week. Spotlight, of course, is seen every Tuesday here on JTV Channel 8 p.m. channel 55, and Sundays at 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon. Watch Spotlight on demand at jtblive.net, like facebook.com/spotlightbvi, like facebook.com, please, spotlightbvi/spotlightbvi. Catch up with the latest spotlights, and of course, if you miss this, you'll be able to catch it on our Facebook page on jtblive.net in a couple of days. And catch up on upcoming guests and topics. So I'm Edgewenka reminding you that when the spotlight is on, you see the facts. Peace and blessings.
Spotlight is brought to you by CCT BVI, Life Unlimited, and the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, the official Bank of Paradise.